As dense fog enveloped Los Rodeos Airport, two colossal Boeing 747s unknowingly embarked on a collision course, setting the stage for the deadliest aviation disaster in history. With 583 lives hanging in the balance, the tragedy was a stark reminder of how a single miscommunication between the KLM crew and air traffic control could unravel into unimaginable despair. In a dramatic turn of events, the seemingly routine departure transformed into a scene of devastation, raising haunting questions about safety in the sky. What went so tragically wrong on that fateful day in 1977 that changed aviation forever? The answers lie within a tangled web of human error, chaotic communication, and the precarious veil of fog that cloaked a Tenerife runway. On March 27, 1977, a catastrophe unfolded at Los Rodeos Airport in Tenerife, Spain, marking the darkest day in the annals of aviation history. The disaster involved the collision of two Boeing 747 jumbo jets on the fog-shrouded runway, claiming 583 lives. This tragic event remains the deadliest aviation accident to date, casting a long shadow over the industry and prompting profound international repercussions. In the wake of the tragedy, the world was forced to confront the vulnerabilities in aviation communication and safety protocols. These massive aircraft, a KLM Royal Dutch Airlines flight and a Pan American World Airways flight, represented the pinnacle of commercial aviation at the time, both in size and technological advancement. Yet, despite the sophistication of these machines, it was a chain of human errors and adverse weather conditions that ultimately led to the disaster. The events of that ominous day unfolded against a backdrop of dense fog, which severely restricted visibility and compounded the challenges faced by air traffic control at Los Rodeos Airport. At the time, Tenerife was hosting an influx of diverted flights due to a separate incident at Gran Canaria Airport, which had been temporarily closed. This increased traffic at an airport, not fully equipped to handle such volumes, increased the risk of mishaps. The KLM aircraft was scheduled for a flight to Amsterdam, while the Pan Am flight was headed to Las Palmas. As the afternoon progressed and the fog thickened, a tragic series of miscommunications and assumptions would soon lead to disaster. The KLM 747, under the command of an experienced captain eager to depart, mistakenly believed he had received takeoff clearance. This misinterpretation was a pivotal error, and as the imposing aircraft began to accelerate down the runway, its fate was unknowingly intertwined with that of the Pan Am flight, taxiing in the opposite direction. Meanwhile, the Pan Am crew, confused by instructions and struggling with the limited visibility, had not yet cleared the runway. The conditions masked the unfolding situation from both pilots and air traffic controllers until it was tragically too late. The collision was cataclysmic. The KLM aircraft, unable to stop its momentum, struck the Pan Am plane broadside. The subsequent explosion and fire consumed both planes, resulting in the devastated scene that emergency responders faced as they arrived. Survivors from the Pan Am flight recounted the chaos and sheer horror of the impact, with desperate efforts to evacuate amid the flames and wreckage. This chaotic tableau and high human toll underscored the enormous impact of the accident. News of the disaster reverberated around the globe, casting grim light on the twin specters of fog and human error. The unfortunate convergence of events that disastrous day serves as a reminder of the inherent risks in aviation, where a single miscommunication can cascade into tragedy. In the aftermath, questions swirled about how such modern aircraft, operated by seasoned crews, could be involved in a calamity of this magnitude. The repercussions were swift and significant, prompting urgent discussions within international aviation bodies about enhancing safety standards and protocols. As we delve deeper into the intricacies of this aviation disaster, the focus shifts to the specific factors contributing to the crash, particularly the role of thick fog. This natural element dramatically impeded visibility, amplifying the likelihood of crucial miscommunications and errors that culminated in the loss of so many lives. The collision at Los Rodeos Airport did not merely involve two of the world's most distinguished airlines, KLM Royal Dutch Airlines and Pan American World Airways, but it also resulted in an unparalleled loss of life that shocked the global community. The calamity on March 27, 1977, did more than end 583 lives. It sent ripples through the aviation industry, prompting a reevaluation of safety practices worldwide. Despite both airlines boasting outstanding safety records and serving as icons of international air travel, they became central to the narrative of this catastrophic day, which underscored the devastating consequences of human error compounded by adverse weather conditions. At that time, KLM and Pan Am were giants in the aviation field, synonymous with the golden age of air travel. Their names were reliable symbols in a burgeoning industry characterized by innovative aircraft like the Boeing 747, which epitomized advanced safety and technology. The KLM flight, under the command of a highly experienced and respected captain, was bound for Amsterdam. Meanwhile, the Pan Am aircraft, much like a city in the sky, was en route from Los Angeles with a scheduled stopover before heading to Las Palmas. As these flights maneuvered through the foggy confines of Los Rodeos Airport, their shared destiny was shaped by a series of unfortunate decisions and unforeseeable circumstances that culminated in tragedy. The magnitude of the disaster quickly echoed through news outlets worldwide, highlighting the sheer number of victims. The incomprehensible loss of 583 lives far surpassed previous records, marking it as the deadliest aviation accident ever. Panic and disbelief gripped the public and professional spheres alike, as families and colleagues of those on board struggled to come to terms with their sudden bereavement. This overwhelming sorrow was exacerbated by the international nature of the flights, which had passengers from over a dozen countries. It made the tragedy a global affair, uniting diverse nations in collective mourning and demanding accountability and understanding. The practical repercussions were immediate and widespread. Aviation regulators responded to the disaster's scale by urgently reviewing their regulations, particularly concerning runway safety and communication protocols. There was a pressing need to prevent a recurrence of such a catastrophe, leading to an eventual overhaul of international aviation standards. One of the most significant outcomes was the implementation of clearer communication requirements between pilots and air traffic control, an area identified as a critical factor in this disaster. The aviation community, as well as the general public, recognized that while technology had improved, human factors like communication and decision-making required equal attention to ensure safety. This profound shock to the aviation sector ushered in changes that would redefine air travel. The tragedy at Tenerife served as a sobering reminder of the instrumental role of human decision-making within a technological framework. As we examine the events leading to this disaster, the role of low visibility due to thick fog becomes a focal point in understanding how environmental and human errors interplayed to cause this unparalleled calamity. The fog at Los Rodeos Airport not only masked the physical visibility, but also symbolized the ambiguity in communication, which played a crucial role in this harrowing sequence of events. The significance of low visibility during the fateful collision at Los Rodeos Airport cannot be overstated. On March 27, 1977, the heavy, almost tangible fog enveloping the runway created a perilous environment, leaving the KLM and Pan Am flight crews effectively navigating blindfolded. The fog not only obscured visibility, but also compounded the inherent challenges of ensuring precise and efficient communication between pilots and air traffic control, a factor critical in maintaining coordination and safety on any airport runway. The ability to see and be seen was dramatically compromised, making it nearly impossible to visually confirm positions and movements on the ground, which are typically used to complement radio communications. At Los Rodeos, located on Tenerife Island, fog is not an uncommon visitor. The airport's geographical setting, nestled among undulating terrain, is particularly susceptible to sudden changes in weather, increasing the risks for pilots unfamiliar with its conditions. On that particular day, the dense fog reduced visual cues to a minimum, making reliance on radar and verbal communication paramount. Unfortunately, the equipment at Los Rodeos in 1977 was not adequately equipped to handle such intense conditions, which exacerbated an already tense situation. Visibility on the runway was reduced to only a few hundred meters, rendering traditional visual methods of confirming runway status practically useless. For pilots and air traffic controllers, normally routine actions, including confirming clear runways or sighting other aircraft, had become momentous challenges. This lack of visibility heightened the dependency on precise and effective communication between the tower and the cockpit. However, in this compromised environment, misunderstandings and assumptions were more likely to occur, as verbal cues replaced visual confirmation. This shift from visual to almost exclusively auditory guidance inadvertently increased the chances of critical miscalculations. Amidst this shrouded environment, the KLM flight crew's eagerness to leave before the situation worsened, and crew duty times elapsed, introduced urgency to their actions. The impulse to maintain schedules is a constant backdrop in aviation. However, in adverse conditions such as those at Tenerife, the risks associated with haste become accentuated. Tragically, this mix of urgency and poor visibility created a scenario ripe for miscommunication. A simple misunderstanding of takeoff clearance phrases between the tower and cockpit could not be rectified by visual affirmation, a potentially life-saving measure absent in the mist on that fateful day. The thick fog essentially erased the visual checks and balances that pilots relied upon, throwing a spotlight onto the fallible human element in air traffic communication. The stage was set for the eventual impact, as both pilots and the air traffic controllers were unable to effectively pinpoint each other's locations on the runway. The shroud of fog not only masked the physical forms of the aircraft, but also symbolized the blurred lines of communication, which would lead to one of the most tragic events in aviation history. As we delve deeper, it becomes crucial to understand how precise communication failed among those involved. Despite the adverse weather, measures to ensure clear understanding between the KLM flight crew and air traffic control could have mitigated the disaster. The breakdown in communication and the subsequent actions it triggered illustrate the vital importance of clarity and protocol adherence in aviation, which were fatally compromised in Tenerife's fog. In the intricate tapestry of events leading to the Tenerife disaster, miscommunication between the KLM flight crew and air traffic control emerged as a pivotal thread that unraveled the tragic sequence. On that fateful afternoon, amidst the blinding fog, the words exchanged over radio crackled with tension and uncertainty. Words that would crucially shape the chain of errors, leading to the deadliest aviation disaster in history. In an environment where verbal clarity was paramount due to the lack of visual cues, the exchanges were tragically marred by misinterpretation and assumptions. The KLM flight, operated by a highly experienced crew, was led by Captain Jacob Veldhuizen van Zanten, a senior pilot with an esteemed career who was even featured prominently in advertising for the airline. Yet, even seasoned professionals are susceptible to the pressures of time, duty hours, and deteriorating weather conditions. As the weather situation worsened, the urgency to depart increased. In such a high-pressure scenario, the proper interpretation of directives and confirmations between the cockpit and the control tower became even more critical. Crucially, the miscommunication began with a fundamental misunderstanding about takeoff clearance. In aviation, procedures dictate clear, unambiguous communication. However, discrepancies in language and procedures can become fraught with misunderstanding. The KLM crew believed they had received the necessary clearance to proceed with takeoff. This erroneous belief was partly due to the ambiguous phrasing and partial exchanges heard over the radio, coupled with the contextual stress of looming fog and air traffic congestion. In air traffic control communications, phrasing like "standing by for takeoff" can be misunderstood with the stress and noise in a cockpit, particularly when other critical issues like poor visibility dominate the pilot's focus. Instead of awaiting further confirmation, the KLM crew took the final ambiguous directive as a go-ahead, due in part to a crucial misunderstanding over the radio. Concurrently, air traffic control, also dealing with the heavy demands brought on by diverted flights and an overcrowded runway, did not catch this crucial error in time. Cultural and linguistic challenges exacerbated these clearances. The international aviation language is English, standardizing communications worldwide, but differences in accent and phrasing can still lead to significant interpretation challenges. In this case, communication breakdowns were not just about missed words, but about cultural expectations of communication and procedural protocol following that was assumed, not confirmed explicitly. This miscommunication set the fatal chain of events in motion with irreversible speed. The aircraft, with powerful engines engaged, started its dramatic roll down the fog-blurred runway. At this juncture, the Pan Am plane remained unseen in the murk, becoming an unwitting participant in the rapidly developing calamity. Despite the skilled and experienced personnel involved, the mix-up in verbal communication proved a critical point of failure under such pressing circumstances. The catastrophic result of this miscommunication further underlined the importance of revisiting and reinforcing communication protocols in aviation. This specific part of the disaster narrative emphasizes how minor lapses or assumptions regarding directives and responses can result in overwhelmingly tragic outcomes. Understanding this component is key as we explore the actions and decisions of the involved pilots, particularly how assumptions and momentary errors can prove fatal in aviation, a field where precision is non-negotiable, setting the stage for understanding how the KLM captain's belief of clearance propelled the pending collision. The Tenerife disaster's unfolding was a tragedy marked by a series of grave misunderstandings, with the actions of KLM's captain becoming central to the narrative. Captain Jacob Veldhuizen van Zanten, a respected and seasoned aviator, occupied a unique position within the airline. His face was synonymous with the brand and advertising campaigns, symbolizing trust and safety. Yet, on March 27, 1977, despite his extensive experience and authority, Captain Van Zanten became ensnared by a deadly mistake. He believed he had received clearance from air traffic control to take off. Caught in the endless cycle of flight schedules, the KLM crew faced the pressing issue of deteriorating weather conditions and the constraints of crew duty hours. This pressure was palpable as delays mounted. The assurance of their departure back to Amsterdam seemed to be slipping away with each passing moment. Under these circumstances, Captain Van Zanten endeavored to accelerate their departure, a decision spurred by urgency, but ultimately tragic in its haste. The critical misstep, a misconstrued radio communication, played a role in his erroneous assumption of clearance, propelling the Boeing 747 down the fog-covered runway. Complexities in communication, a recurrent theme in the disaster, were underscored in the captain's error. Given the fraught conditions and the procedural demands on air traffic control at Los Rodeos Airport, the exchange lacked the vital clarity necessary for such a high-stakes situation. Language nuances, procedural jargon, and the auditory distractions common in a busy cockpit contributed to the misinterpretation. In a world dictated by procedure, Van Zanten's premature decision was a stark deviation from protocol, allowing assumptions to override explicit confirmation requirements. The mistaken belief in runway clearance was magnified by the fog, severely limiting visual assurance and forcing reliance on radio dialogue that, unbeknownst to the crew, bore fatal ambiguities. As the KLM aircraft barreled down the runway, the captain and his crew believed they were safely following procedure, with no visual cue to contradict their path. The dense fog was all-consuming, and without the ability to sight the Pan Am 747 awaiting clearance itself, the impending disaster moved inexorably into a line of devastating inevitability. In aviation, the discipline of adhering strictly to communication and confirmation protocols is sacrosanct, especially under conditions where a single mistake can lead to catastrophic outcomes. Captain Van Zanten's actions, born from urgency, shone a spotlight on the human propensity for error when assumptions lay siege to procedural integrity. Despite the sophisticated machinery and his exemplary skill, the absence of clear confirmation entangled him in a series of irrecoverable misjudgments. This pivotal moment emphasized why stringent adherence to established confirmation protocols is non-negotiable in aviation. It highlighted the clear and present need for reinforcing such protocols to prevent repetitions of similar human errors. The consequence of this lapse was the KLM aircraft's irreversible advance towards an unanticipated collision path with the Pan Am flight, still taxiing on the runway and unbeknownst to them of the fatal drama unfolding amidst the fog. As the speeding KLM aircraft approached its tragic fate, the attention pivots to the Pan Am crew, who, in a shocking turn of events, remained oblivious to the impending collision as they navigated their own challenges on that fog-draped runway. As the events at Los Rodeos Airport unfolded, the Pan American World Airways flight sat unaware on the fog-laden runway, unknowingly entwined in the unfolding tragedy. Tasked with taxiing through a maze of fog and radio instructions, the Pan Am crew faced their own set of challenges. On board Flight 1736, under the command of Captain Victor Grubbs, a pilot equally seasoned in navigating the skies, the crew was engrossed in interpreting directions amidst the chaotic environment and congested airspace caused by the unexpected diversion of flights to Tenerife that day. Unlike at larger airports, the ground radar technology at Los Rodeos was largely insufficient, relying heavily on human interpretation and precise dialogue between air traffic control and pilots. This reliance on verbal coordination, in the absence of visual aids due to the fog, meant that Captain Grubbs and his crew were operating with limited awareness of their surroundings, a situation exacerbated by their physical disconnection from the control tower's intentions and other aircraft positions. Consequently, each message crackled over the radio represented a fragment of a larger, indiscernible picture, contributing to the creeping unease under the circumstances. The sheer dimensions and operational complexity of a Boeing 747, boasting a wingspan exceeding that of most conventional aircraft, presented further difficulties when maneuvering through unknown terrain, particularly within the intricate taxiways of an airport not designed to host such large-scale aircraft with frequency. Coupled with the swirling fog, these factors lent an air of trepidation to their progress. The Pan Am crew, painstakingly following each instruction, were fixated on navigating to their designated runway exit, utterly oblivious to the trajectory of the KLM flight barreling unsuspectingly towards them. As moments ticked by, the Pan Am aircraft remained stalled, partially across the active runway. Here, operating under the weight of assumptions that the runway was clear, and with their own lack of visual affirmation due to the heavy fog, focus shifted more towards deciphering tower transmissions than discerning any immediate external threat. The details of what lay hidden in the surrounding mist were unseen and unimagined. In the brief yet irrevocable seconds leading to the collision, radio warnings fizzled through airwaves, crackling amidst interference and urgency, but the clarity required to prompt swift, coordinated action was absent. Torn between the rigors of following protocol and the human inclination towards prioritization and assumption under duress, the Pan Am crew continued along their prescribed path, unable to foresee or forestall the incoming danger their sister aircraft now posed. The disaster's unwelcome arrival shattered this uneasy equilibrium when KLM's aircraft collided with incredible force into the Pan Am jet. The sheer kinetic energy of the collision immediately transformed it into an inferno of burning metal and aviation fuel, a stark, harrowing reality that turned the unease of uncertainty into devastating recognition within mere moments. The suffocating fog that clouded visibility and judgment dissolved in a dreadful instant, revealing a scene of catastrophic ruin and despair. In the heart of this tumultuous devastation, the tragedy left part of the Pan Am cabin still intact, the ensuing fire consuming the remnants as survivors scrambled to escape. The reactions of passengers and crew members, thrust suddenly from order to chaos, were defined by their desperate will to survive amid an appalling tableau of flames and wreckage. As aviation history records this unparalleled disaster, it also echoes with lessons in the vulnerability of human judgment under compounded duress, a profound reminder sketched in jet smoke and circumstance. Transitioning from this shock, the focus turns to the massive loss of life and scenes of devastation that marked this ill-fated day. In the seconds following the collision at Los Rodeos Airport, the grim reality of the situation became achingly clear. The impact of KLM's Boeing 747 striking Pan Am's jet triggered an explosive inferno that nearly instantaneously consumed both aircraft. The resulting flames were fed by thousands of gallons of jet fuel, transforming the runway into a scene of unimaginable devastation. Reports from the time capture the sheer horror. The entire area became a fiery hellscape, with black smoke billowing into the already clouded skies, compounding the chaos with an acrid, suffocating layer that further obscured visibility for rescuers trying to comprehend the scene. The physical destruction was catastrophic. The impact itself had been brutal. The speeds involved and the force of such massive vehicles colliding rendered structural integrity moot in an instant. The KLM aircraft, having attempted to lift off just at the point of collision, caught the upper fuselage of the Pan Am airplane, ripping through metal with unrelenting force. The aftermath left a tangled wreck of twisted metal and scorched debris, the runway littered with fragments that were once part of two of the most advanced aircraft of their time. Survivors and first responders alike were thrust into a desperate struggle for survival amidst the flames. Inside the Pan Am plane, the speed of the blaze caught many passengers unprepared. Those who survived the initial crash scrambled to find exits, battling smoke inhalation and obstructed pathways. For these individuals, including the partially intact sections of the cabin, survival hinged on swift action against a backdrop of encroaching fire and smoke. Every second carried the gravest of consequences. Images of the devastation spread worldwide, offering visceral testament to the human cost of the disaster. Their immediate publication and wide circulation shocked those far removed from the event, resonating deeply across nations. The sight of burnt fuselages against the green fields of Tenerife was a stark depiction of not only lives lost, but of the incredible vulnerability inherent in aviation, a field reliant upon implicit trust in technology and human precision. The accident became a benchmark for calamity, underscoring the scale of repercussions when communication and environment fail to align in aviation. The unprecedented scale of human tragedy saw families and communities from diverse nationalities thrust into mourning, grappling with a loss that felt avoidable and utterly devastating. A global conversation about safety and protocol ensued, compelling airlines and aviation authorities to reconsider and reformulate essential practices around communication, training, and response to low-visibility scenarios. Survivors grappled with the physical and emotional scars left by the disaster. The humanitarian response in Tenerife was swift, characterized by locals and emergency teams drawn together in an effort to assist and recover, forging a tableau of collective human effort amidst ruin. As the immediate shock subsided, the aviation community faced intense scrutiny and self-reflection, prompted by the urgency of preventing recurrence. As the dust settled, profound lessons began to surface from the smoldering remnants of the collision. Questions of how such a disaster could occur and how a similar event could be prevented in the future became central to both public discourse and technical inquiry. The tragedy at Tenerife was a critical juncture, compelling change within the industry from technical advancements to cultural shifts emphasizing safety, a topic that would continuously redefine aviation standards in the decades to follow.